Hi, I'm Amina Wasuma, and I'm here to talk about my novel, Amberstone Agent Zero, Episode 20, Karen Williams. Now, we left off with the Libyan gathering, whereas Muhammed Akbar was introducing Halima and Imani to Thai Terrorist Incorporated extortionists in Libya. So they're sitting around the table, and Karen, aka Hyena, wants Muhammad Akbar to tell her story because he wants her to put a good word in with Queen Nayar, recommending that he write their manifesto. So he's hoping to get at least $7 million, if he could get the job. Plus fame, and recognition, and just a step up for him. So Hyena, aka Karen, demands that he tells her story. She wants to see if he can tell it accurately. So he begins. Karen Williams, aka Hyena, was once just Karen Williams. She lived in Boston, Massachusetts with her mother, Matilda. Her father, was kicked out of the home for gambling, and he lived in New York. She didn't see him. She hadn't seen him in 8 years. So it's just her and Matilda. Two struggling people, women, mother and daughter. So Karen gets a job as in a meteorologist laboratory. And she's working as, not an intern, but entry level. And she's really much smarter than that. She wants to be a newscaster, like come on the news, television newscaster, where she comes on at 6 and 11 and she forecasts the weather. And she's kind of nerdy looking, but she's trying to keep her weight down, and she's trying to copy. And at this particular time, they're mostly men that predict the weather. Not very many women are weather forecasters. And she wants to be like one of the first pioneers. So she watches and, she copies. And this is her ambition. But anyway, she's at this job, and it's entry level. It's not a lot of money, but it's just enough for her and Matilda to get by. And Matilda works as a temp in an office. And, so she gets some money, not a lot, but she owns the house that they live in. It's not really modernized. It's a, old house. And it has a garage, and Karen is trying to build a weather machine in the garage, but she doesn't have the money as of yet. She has a few pieces to it, but it's not completed, and she needs funding, and no one is willing to give it to her. So she goes to work, and she does the weather forecast. It goes out to farmers and the government. It doesn't really go on the nightly news, as these are researchers. She tries to tell her boss, I am inventing this weather machine. I just need funding for it. And if I could get funding for it, it would make my job and everyone else's job a lot easier. And so his response is like, Karen, just enjoy being an employee. One day you'll be a boss, but right now you're an employee. And I know you're the smartest one here. And you're being underpaid. but, I don't have anything else for you. She's like, yeah, okay. So she's sitting there doing her work when the phone rings, and it's the hospital calling, saying that Matilda had a stroke and a heart attack and passed out on the street. They brought her to the hospital and she died. And Karen's like, oh my God, what do I do? And so she tells her boss, I gotta leave. I gotta go to the hospital to identify, my mother's body. She just died. She had cholesterol. So he says, okay. So she goes and she identifies the body, and it is Matilda. And she goes home. She has to make the funeral arrangements and everything. She calls her father, Wes Williams, and she said, well, I haven't seen you in 8 years. I just want to let you know Matilda died. And so she said, you can come to the funeral, or you don't have to come, but I just wanted to let you know. And so the next couple of days, she gets everything together, her co-workers, Matilda's co-workers are all at the wake. And here comes her father, Wes. He hadn't seen her in like 8, 9, 10 years. Not a postcard, no money, no anything. And he shows up at the door, and he couldn't even recognize her. Oh, Karen, you're such a beautiful girl. And, I'm sorry Matilda died. And, she asked me to leave, and she didn't want me to come see you. And, he made up every excuse in the book as to why he was a deadbeat, delinquent dad. And so he told her, I used to have a lot of money. I had a gambling problem. And she, she didn't want me around. So I left and, moved to Vegas, and the rest is history. But I got to leave town because I got a loan shark that's after me. And can I borrow some money? And he was like, no way. You can't borrow any money. You got a lot of nerve. And now you're off, and I won't ever see you again. No, I can't let you know where I'm going because, they're after me, and, I got to disappear. He said, well, thanks for dropping by. And he leaves. And he doesn't even stay that long. He leaves. So after the wake and the burial, everything is done and tidied up, and she's got a little money from what Matilda left her, and she buys some pieces for her weather machine, and she turns the garage, into a laboratory. So she is at work, she goes back to work, and everything is okay. And about a week or two go by. She's just feeling alone. The boyfriend that she had before, Tom, he was wealthy, and she wasn't. And the father did not want Tom to marry her. He was in the NFL. And she did not want to move to another city with him, and be a football wife. She didn't want to do that. She had her own ambitions, so, she stayed with Matilda. So now she's on her own, no family, in this big house, and it's like lonely, but she has to work. So one night on the way home from work, she just breaks down. She just can't deal with it anymore. It's like holding back the tears. And she pulls the car over, on the road. And she just wants to cry. You know, her mother's dead. She has nobody in the world. She's just working on this weather machine. It's either do or die, because this machine is her life. This is the way she looks at it. There's no moving up, because it'll take her years before she can become a newscaster. And that's what she wants to be. She wants to be on the news 6 and 11 p.m. To broadcast the news. But like at this time, there's not that many women. Actually, there's no women, only men that she can model after. And so she would be like one of the few pioneers casting the news. So she's thinking, and she sits there and she's just sobbing. And all of a sudden, her car is hit head on by a drunk driver. And she's parked, and the driver just runs, head on into her car, and she topples over. And the drunk driver is a woman. She dies in the accident. But Karen is taken to the hospital. And she's in like a coma for 4 weeks. Finally, she comes out of that. And she has a broken arm too. So the doctor examines her after 4 weeks. So everything seems to be all right. And she's released from the hospital. She returns back to work, and they accept her back, no problem. And all of a sudden, she starts laughing. So everybody's working in the lab. There's like 6 or 7 people there. And she busts out laughing. And she just laughs until she cries. So they all look and say, well, what's wrong with Karen? And this goes on for about a month. Finally, her boss calls her into the office and says, I'm going to have to let you go because you've just been laughing and it's interrupting, the others, your coworkers. And she says, well, you can't fire me because I want to be a newscaster, and you can't fire me. I want to be a newscaster, and I need a reference. So who is going to hire me? No one in television will hire me if I don't have a reputable reference. So he says, well, Karen, that's not my problem. You need some kind of help. There's something wrong. You can't stop laughing. And maybe there's something wrong with your brain that needs to be fixed. But I can't rate this as a disability, and I can't keep you on. Even if it was a disability, I can't keep you here because you're interrupting your coworkers. And they need to concentrate and they need quiet. And, it's just not going to work. So pack your things and leave. Sorry. So he puts his hand out to shake her hand, and she doesn't shake it. She huffs, puffs, and, grunts and walks out of his office, packs her little things in a box, and leaves. She goes back home, the big empty house. Matilda's not there. And she goes up in Matilda's room and she looks around. She looks in the drawer and there's a .32 pistol. She's like, okay, maybe I wasn't meant to be a newscaster. You know, maybe I was meant to be a weather manipulator. She says, I got to get money to finish my machine. And so it's Halloween. Like, it's Halloween, around Halloween, it's Halloween the next day. And so she feels, let me go and get a mask and go to car rental, rent a car, and have an interchangeable license plate. Now she's figured this out. And so she does all of that. The next day comes, she puts on her Hyena mask. She got that from a Halloween shop. And she has her like black wig and glasses and hat in one bag. And then in the other bag, so the other, it's an identical black bag, like a tote bag. She has nothing. And so she pulls up to the bank, goes in, puts the mask on. She has the mask on, I'm sorry, already. And she says, it's a stick-up. No one will get hurt. And the guard goes to pull his gun and she shoots him. And she tells the teller to put the money in the bag. And the teller puts about $250,000 in the tote bag. And so she walks out of the bank, gets in the car, drives to a deserted area, changes the license plate, takes the car back to the rental car place. And also, while she's, driving, she takes the wig off and the mask off, and she puts her wig on, and she puts dark glasses and a hat, floppy hat on, so you can't really see her face. But while she was robbing the bank, she was laughing. So that laugh was recognized. So that's how they know it was her, by her lab co-workers who saw the news that night. She was on the news that night. It showed the robbery. And she was like, oh, I'm so glad I'm going to be on the 6 o'clock news. And, I'm famous. But her co-workers reported her to the police. So we know that laugh. It sounds familiar. It sounds so much like Karen Williams. And so that's all the police had to go on. Anyway, she found one of Matilda's old boyfriends, who was a cocaine drug dealer. And Matilda cut him off because he was on drugs and selling drugs. She didn't want nothing to do with him, So she says, I got to get out of town. I robbed a bank. He said, Karen, nerdy Karen, robbed a bank. She said, yeah, I got to get out of town. How do I get out of town? So he tells her to go to Miguel's car shop. And he works for Banderos. And she gives him $50,000. And he gives her a ticket on a private plane to Colombia. And from Colombia, she flies to Libya, and she becomes a terrorist. And Queen IR accepts her because she has a weather machine, and her objective is to use it as a weapon against the New World Order, which is America. And she's not bitter that she didn't become a newscaster. She thought that's what she wanted, and she worked so hard for it, and it's not what was meant to be. She was meant to be Hyena, you know, the woman who controls the weather. And she has an ambition to create thunderstorms, uh, rainstorms, earthquakes, snowstorms. However, she wants to manipulate the weather, she wants uh, the power to do so. And her weather machine will give her that power. That is awesome, uh, for her. And the weapon will give Ty great power and control over society once it's perfected. So Muhammad Akbar finishes his story, and she says, okay, so you remembered everything. I'm going to go in and give you a good reference. So he says, okay. And Hyena and Meg get up from the table and go into Queen Nayab's throne room, leaving Imani and Halima at the table with the Queen of Clubs and Cindy Beauty. And so the Queen of Clubs and Joe are going to turn in, and so they're going to escort Imani and Halima to their rooms. So now, Hyena was accepted. So Muhammad Akbar, the question is he going to write the story and get $5 or $6 million, or is he going to stay a courier? Is Hyena going to build her weather machine? Or when she builds it, will it work? So those are the questions that will be answered in the upcoming episodes. So stay tuned for episode 21.